She walked into the grand wedding hall with quiet grace, her dress plain, her hair pinned back simply. No designer labels, no flashy jewelry, just a calm presence and a kind smile. From the moment she stepped through the marble doors, heads turned, but not out of admiration, out of judgment. Whispers spread like wildfire. Who invited her asterisk? She doesn't belong here. In a room filled with luxury cars, tailored suits, and diamond-studded gowns, she looked ordinary. But what no one knew, what not a single person in that glittering hall could guess, was that this simple woman wasn't just a guest. She wasn't a +1 or someone who'd wandered in by mistake. She was someone whose story ran deeper than the silk and champagne that surrounded her. She had built her life quietly, out of sight, with strength that couldn't be bought. And unlike the millionaire groom and his high society guests, she didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Still, the mocking glances came. The bride's friends giggled behind manicured hands. A waiter hesitated before serving her. Even the groom, once her close friend, barely acknowledged her presence. They'd all made up their minds. She was beneath them. But what they didn't realize was that under her calm exterior was a story that would turn the entire night upside down. She wasn't just richer than anyone in that hall, she was powerful in ways money couldn't measure. And by the end of that evening, the laughter would stop, the whispers would change, and one shocking truth would leave them all speechless. So, who was this woman? And what was she doing at a millionaire's wedding, surrounded by people who had no idea what she was truly worth? You're about to find out. Her name was Elena. Most of the guests didn't remember her, or maybe they pretended not to. Years ago, she had been just another girl in town, quiet, soft-spoken, working long hours at a little bookstore by the corner cafe. Back then, no one paid much attention to her. Not even Daniel, the groom, who used to pass her by with a nod at best. But she remembered him, not because he was kind, because he wasn't. Daniel had grown up in wealth, surrounded by people who only saw value in shiny things. His circle was tight, exclusive, and full of arrogance. Elena didn't fit into it then, and clearly nothing had changed. What the wedding crowd didn't know was that Elena had left town years ago after something happened that changed her life completely. No one saw her struggle, her sleepless nights, or the quiet way she built everything from scratch. She didn't inherit anything, she didn't marry into wealth. She made her own path, through smart investments, tech startups, and sheer grit. And now, standing in that hall full of people who had once overlooked her, she was the quiet owner of companies these millionaires depended on without even knowing it. But Elena hadn't come to show off. She didn't believe in that. She had come because of a promise, one she'd made long before Daniel had become the man he was now. She stood there not as a guest, not even as a friend, but as a silent storm in the middle of their perfect day. The bride smiled for photos, completely unaware of the undercurrent running through her picture-perfect wedding. Her gown shimmered under the crystal chandeliers, her laughter echoing across the hall like music. But behind that glow, something deeper was unfolding, something that no one had prepared for. Elena watched quietly from a corner, sipping water while conversations buzzed around her. She could feel the judgment in every sideways glance, the pity masked as politeness. A woman beside her whispered, loud enough to be heard, "Maybe she's a family friend from the old days, or someone they had to invite out of guilt." Elena didn't flinch. She was used to that kind of talk. What they didn't know was that the entire venue, from the flower arrangements to the tech systems behind the event planning software, had connections tracing back to her businesses. If she wanted to, she could have pulled the plug on the whole event with one quiet call. But that wasn't why she came. Meanwhile, on the other side of the hall, Daniel caught sight of her. His jaw tightened. Memories from years ago started to surface, ones he'd buried deep. He hadn't expected her to show up, especially not today. His bride, Naomi, noticed the shift in his face and followed his gaze. "Do you know her?" she asked, brows raised. He hesitated, then muttered, "Just someone I used to know." But Naomi wasn't convinced. Her instincts, sharp from years of growing up around people who always had motives, told her Elena wasn't just someone. She leaned in, watching Elena with a narrowed gaze, her smile fading just slightly. What no one knew, what even Daniel hadn't figured out, was that Elena's presence wasn't an accident. It was deliberate, and the reason she came would change everything. Dinner was being served, and the chatter grew louder as guests clinked glasses and made small talk. But Elena wasn't listening. Her eyes stayed fixed on the head table, where Daniel and Naomi sat surrounded by their closest friends, people who had laughed at her years ago, people who never thought she'd return. She wasn't here to stir up the past, but there were things that couldn't be left unsaid forever. A toast was announced. Daniel stood, champagne flute in hand, his voice confident as he thanked everyone for coming. He glanced at Elena again, his voice faltering just slightly before he regained composure. "Tonight is about love, new beginnings, and moving forward," he said. The guests clapped, unaware of the tension growing behind his smile. Naomi, still uneasy, leaned close to her maid of honor and whispered, "Find out who she is. I want to know everything." Her voice was sharp, eyes locked on Elena. She didn't like surprises, and this woman, so calm, so sure, was definitely one. Back near the doors, an older man approached Elena. He wore a modest suit, nothing flashy, but his presence had weight. "You ready?" he asked softly. Elena nodded. He was one of her oldest business partners, the only one who knew the full story. He'd flown in just for this moment, not out of obligation, of respect. Meanwhile, a projector screen was being set up for the couple's surprise tribute. Naomi's brother had arranged a short video to celebrate their journey, with messages from friends and family. But someone else had slipped in a different file, one no one expected. The tech team, unknowingly following scheduled instructions, was minutes away from pressing play. As the lights dimmed and music faded, the air shifted. The moment was coming. And when the truth hit, it would hit harder than anyone imagined. The room went dark and a hush fell over the crowd. Soft piano music began to play as the projector screen lit up. Faces smiled back from the video, childhood photos of Daniel, college clips, a few heartfelt messages from distant relatives. Everyone laughed, clapped, relaxed. Then the screen flickered. The music cut. And a new video began. It wasn't grainy or old. It was crisp, professional, recently recorded. The first frame showed a company boardroom, modern, sleek, the kind you only saw in billion-dollar firms. The camera slowly panned until it landed on Elena, seated at the head of the table. Gasps rippled through the room. Daniel's face froze. Naomi stiffened. The video continued, Elena's voice calm and steady as she walked viewers through her company's mission, its global impact, and its quiet acquisition of multiple startups, including one that Daniel's father had once owned, the same one that funded the lavish wedding they were now celebrating. It didn't stop there. Another voice came in, an investor, then a former CEO, speaking with admiration about the mysterious woman behind it all. Her name, Elena Rivera, appeared in bold letters across the screen. Not just a businesswoman, not just wealthy. A quiet tycoon who had built an empire without ever needing the approval of those in this very room. Daniel rose from his chair, panic flashing in his eyes. "Turn it off," he'd barked at the tech team, but it was too late. The video was locked in. Then came the second twist. A pause in the video, a soft click. A contract flashed on screen, an old document. Daniel's signature, Elena's name. A deal from years ago, one he'd signed casually, never reading the fine print, never thinking it would mean anything. But it meant everything now. And suddenly, this wasn't just a wedding anymore. It was the fallout of a choice he made long ago, one that was about to catch up with him in front of everyone. The room was silent, frozen in shock. On screen, the contract remained clear as day. Elena Rivera, the simple woman everyone mocked, was not just a guest. She was the silent owner of the company that had rescued Daniel's family business years ago. A deal he had agreed to without question, thinking it was temporary, thinking she'd disappear like everyone else who didn't matter in his world. But Elena hadn't disappeared. She had watched, she had waited, and she had built. Daniel's voice cracked as he turned to Naomi. I didn't know, I didn't think. But Naomi wasn't listening. Her eyes were locked on Elena, whose calm expression said everything without saying a word. Then Elena stood up. The room turned toward her. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't gloat. She just spoke. I never came here for revenge. I came to honor a promise, she said, her voice steady. Years ago, Daniel's father helped me when no one else would. When the company was on the edge of collapse, I invested quietly. I never asked for credit. I only asked for one thing, to speak, just once on the day Daniel married. A promise your father made to me, and one I never forgot. She stepped toward the mic, holding a small envelope. This, she continued, is the final transfer. As of today, full ownership of the company returns to your family. The room gasped again, but not out of shock this time. Out of disbelief. Elena had walked into that room owning everything, and chose to give it away. Daniel was speechless. Naomi blinked, unsure what to feel. Then, just as Elena turned to leave, Naomi's maid of honor stepped forward, face pale. Elena, she said softly, I think you should know. Daniel didn't marry you back then because he was told not to. By *me*. The room turned again. One final twist, buried in silence for years, had just risen to the surface. And suddenly, the story wasn't just about wealth or revenge. It was about everything they never said. The room stood still, the air heavy with things that had been buried too long. Elena looked at the maid of honor, Rachel, who now avoided her eyes. So much made sense in that moment. The sudden silence from Daniel years ago, the unreturned letters, the way their friendship had ended without a reason. It hadn't been his decision alone. Someone else had stepped in, out of jealousy, out of pride, and in doing so, they'd rewritten the course of 3 lives. Elena didn't say a word. She didn't need to. She simply nodded, not with anger, but with something deeper, acceptance. What was done had shaped her, yes, but it hadn't broken her. Daniel sat down slowly, overwhelmed. I never knew, he said quietly. If I had. Elena smiled, just slightly. But you didn't. And that's okay. We're exactly where we're meant to be. She handed the envelope to the event manager, nodded politely, and began to walk toward the exit. People moved aside, no longer looking at her with confusion or mockery, but with quiet respect. Outside, the night air felt lighter. She stood beneath the string lights lining the entrance, breathing in the calm. The wedding went on behind her, faded laughter, clinking glasses, but her chapter there was done. She hadn't come to take anything back, she came to let it go. And that was the difference. Because true power doesn't need a spotlight, and real wealth isn't always loud. Sometimes, the richest person in the room is the one who walks away, not with more, but with peace. As she stepped into the waiting car, one question hung in the air, not from others, but from within. What's next? And with a quiet smile, Elena knew the answer. Whatever she chose.